If my wolf breaks free, lock the door and leave me to die. Alpha King Everett Blackwood's voice cut through the medical room just as thunder shook the windows. Mara Whitmore froze with a roll of gauze in her hand. 3 guards stood near the wall, pale and tense, while Dr. Helena Voss pressed both hands against the wound beneath Everett's ribs. The silver buried there wasn't ordinary. It carried a curse, and every time Helena tried to remove it, Everett's eyes flashed with the cold light of his wolf. "Everyone out," Helena ordered. One guard moved immediately. Another hesitated. Mara stayed where she was. Everett noticed. Even half-conscious, bleeding through a black shirt worth more than Mara made in a year, he looked every inch the king people feared. "Did you not hear her, Omega?" One of the guards snapped. "Leave." Mara lowered her eyes, not in surrender, but because it was easier than letting them see her anger. In Silverpine Pack, Omegas followed orders. They cleaned rooms, prepared medicine, and stayed quiet when higher ranks spoke. Mara had become very good at quiet. Helena suddenly stumbled back as Everett's hand struck the metal tray beside her. Instruments crashed across the floor. His breathing turned rough. Not human, not entirely wolf. "Get them out," he growled. The guards pulled Helena toward the door. Mara should have gone with them. Instead, she crossed the room and locked it. Everett stared at her. "That was your last warning." She approached slowly, carrying clean gauze, a bottle of antiseptic, and the small silver forceps Helena had dropped. Everett's wolf pushed against the surface, filling the room with pressure so heavy Mara's knees nearly buckled. Nearly. She touched 2 fingers to his wrist. His pulse was wild. His skin burned beneath her hand. "You think you can calm me?" he asked. Mara said nothing. She never did. Most of Silverpine believed she had lost her voice as a child. That lie had kept her alive for 15 years. Everett's gaze sharpened when she placed her palm above the cursed wound. The silver reacted at once. A thin blue light spread beneath his skin, and his back arched against the table. Mara's fear rose hard and fast. She remembered her mother's final warning. Never sing where an alpha can hear you, especially a king. But Everett's heartbeat began to falter. One beat, then another. Mara closed her eyes. The first note escaped before she could stop it. Soft, low, barely more than breath. The room changed. Everett's claws withdrew. His shoulders loosened. The storm inside him went still. Mara continued the old melody her mother had taught her in secret, each note warming the freezing space between them. For the first time since entering Silverpine, the Alpha King looked peaceful. Then his eyes opened. Not silver now, but clear gray. Human. Aware. Mara stopped singing. Silence rushed back into the room. Everett caught her wrist before she could pull away. His grip was firm, but not cruel. His expression held something more dangerous than anger. Recognition. "That song," he said quietly. "I heard it once beneath the royal throne." Mara's blood turned cold. Everett pulled her one step closer. "Tell me your name, Omega." She stared at him, unable to move. His wolf whispered across the space between them, one word neither of them was ready to understand. "Mate." For one dangerous second, Mara thought Everett had heard the word too. Mate. It had not been spoken aloud, but it had moved through the room like a second heartbeat. His hand was still around her wrist, warm and steady now, while the storm battered the windows of the Silverpine medical wing. "Your name," he repeated. Mara pulled free and reached for the small notepad kept beside the medicine cabinet. Her fingers shook only once before she wrote, "Mara Whitmore." Everett read it, then looked at her mouth. "And the song." She wrote again. "You were feverish. You heard what you wanted to hear." One corner of his mouth almost moved. It was not a smile. Men like Everett Blackwood probably did not waste smiles on people they barely knew. "I do not imagine voices, Miss Whitmore." The lock rattled behind her. "Mara," Helena called from the hallway. "Open the door." Mara stepped back, but Everett caught the edge of the blanket before she could move farther away. It was such a small gesture that anyone else might have missed it. She did not. "You will remain until my physician returns," he said. Mara lifted an eyebrow and pointed toward the door. "That was not a request," he added. She wrote one final line and held it up. Then it was not worth answering. This time, Everett did smile, though it vanished quickly. When Mara opened the door, Helena rushed in with 2 guards and stopped cold. The Alpha King was calm. Not restrained. Not sedated. Calm. Helena's eyes moved from Everett to Mara, then to the scattered instruments on the floor. "What happened?" Everett answered before Mara could reach for the pad. Your assistant stabilized me. One guard gave a short laugh. Her? She changes sheets. Mara felt the insult land exactly where it had landed 100 times before, in the quiet place she had trained herself not to show. Everett turned his head toward the guard. The room seemed to shrink around him. Then Silverpine has been wasting remarkable talent on laundry. No one laughed again. By morning, the curse had settled beneath Everett's skin, though the wound still refused to close. Mara stayed busy in the supply room, counting bandages she had already counted twice. She could still feel the echo of his wolf against her own, a low pull beneath her ribs that made no sense. Mate bonds did not happen like that. Not to forgotten Omegas. Not to kings. Helena found her there. You sang, she said quietly. Mara went still. Helena closed the door. I knew your mother, Mara. I know what your voice can do. Mara's pencil snapped between her fingers. Helena's face softened. You need to be careful. Everett Blackwood has spent years surrounded by people who want something from him. If he believes your voice is tied to the crown, he will not let this go. Before Mara could respond, boots sounded in the hallway. Everett appeared in the doorway wearing a clean black shirt, one hand pressed subtly to his side. Doctor, he said, though his eyes stayed on Mara. My injury requires continued observation. Helena frowned. You are stable enough to travel. I disagree. Mara knew at once what he was doing. He knew that she knew. Everett held her gaze with the calm authority of a man used to changing laws with a sentence. Miss Whitmore will handle my treatment until I leave Silverpine. Helena started to object, but he added, and I have not decided when that will be. By noon, everyone in Silverpine knew the Alpha King had delayed his departure because of Mara Whitmore. No one knew the real reason, which meant the pack invented several. Some said she had slipped something into his medicine. Others claimed an Omega could not calm a king without using forbidden scent work. Mara heard the whispers as she crossed the medical wing with a tray of fresh bandages, but she kept walking. She had survived worse things than gossip. What unsettled her was the quiet pull beneath her ribs, the one that sharpened whenever Everett was near. She entered his room and found him standing by the window, already dressed for travel in a dark coat and polished boots. You said you were not leaving, Helena said from behind Mara. Everett turned. I said I had not decided when. His gaze settled on Mara. I have decided now. Helena folded her arms. The silver is still active, which is why Miss Whitmore is coming with me. The tray nearly slipped from Mara's hands. She set it down, grabbed her notepad, and wrote one word. No. Everett read it without blinking. That was direct. Mara added another line. I am not a royal healer. You treated the wound when 3 trained healers could not. I am an assistant. Then I am promoting you. Helena gave him a flat look. You cannot promote someone who does not work for you. Everett reached into his coat and placed a folded document on the table. The black wax seal of the crown was impossible to mistake. Now she does. Mara stared at the order. Her name had been written beneath a temporary royal appointment, along with transport privileges, protected status, and a salary large enough to make her stomach turn. It was not a request. Worse, it was generous enough to look like one. Helena stepped between them. She has the right to refuse. Everett's jaw tightened. For a second, the room filled with alpha pressure, cold and heavy. Then he pulled it back. Yes, he said. She does. Mara looked up, surprised. Everett met her eyes. I am asking you to come to Blackridge for 1 week. Treat the wound. Help me understand what happened last night. After that, you may return here with full pay and no obligation. Mara wrote carefully. And if I refuse now? His answer came without hesitation. I leave without you. Something in his voice made the words feel more honest than she expected. He was not threatening her. He was giving her the choice, even though every instinct in him seemed to hate it. That should have made the decision easier. It did not. By sunset, Mara sat across from Everett in the back of a black sport utility vehicle winding through the Colorado mountains. Snow covered the highway shoulders, and pine trees rose like dark walls on both sides. Neither of them spoke. Mara held her notepad in her lap. Everett kept one hand near his ribs, pretending the motion was casual. 10 miles outside Silverpine territory, the vehicle hit a deep rut. Pain crossed his face. His wolf surged so suddenly that Mara felt it inside her own chest. She leaned forward and pressed her palm over his heart. Everett caught her wrist, But this time he did not push her away. Their eyes met. His heartbeat slowed beneath her hand. Then the bond opened for one impossible second. Mara felt his exhaustion, years of it, buried beneath duty and control. Everett felt her fear, not of him, but of being discovered. Both of them pulled back at once. The driver glanced into the mirror. "Your Majesty?" Everett did not answer. His wolf moved through his mind with a certainty that left no room for denial. Mate, Blackridge Citadel appeared just after midnight, rising above the snow-covered ridge like it had been carved from the mountain itself. The lower floors were all glass, steel, and security lights, but the towers behind them were centuries old, dark stone wrapped in ice. Mara had seen pictures before. None of them showed how cold the place felt. The vehicle stopped beneath a covered entrance, and 6 royal guards moved into position before Everett opened his door. He stepped out without help, though Mara saw the slight tension in his shoulders. The cursed silver was hurting him again. He looked back at her. "Stay close." Mara frowned and lifted her notepad. "I know how to walk through a door." Everett read the message, and for the briefest second, amusement softened his face. "I am sure you do." Inside, staff members lined the marble hallway with their heads lowered. Betas stood nearest the entrance, followed by Gammas, then Omegas in plain gray uniforms near the back. Pack hierarchy was not merely respected at Blackridge. It was built into the walls. A woman with copper-blonde hair approached in a tailored navy coat. She carried herself like someone who had never been asked to move aside. "Everett," she said, "the council expected you tomorrow." "The council survives disappointment every day, Celeste." Her eyes moved to Mara. "Not cruelly. Carefully. And this is Mara Whitmore. She is overseeing my treatment." Celeste glanced at the medical bag in Mara's hand, then at the place where Everett had positioned himself half a step in front of her. "Of course she is." Everett ignored the comment and turned to a waiting steward. "Prepare the East guest suite." The steward hesitated. "Your Majesty, the medical staff rooms are in the south wing." "I know where they are. The East suite is beside your private quarters." The hallway went silent. Everett's expression did not change. "That is why I chose it." Mara felt every eye turn toward her. She wrote quickly and held the pad between them. "I can stay with the other medical staff." Everett read it. No, her eyes narrowed. "The wound can become unstable without warning," he added, lowering his voice. "I need you nearby." It was a practical explanation. It was also a weak one, and they both knew it. Celeste waited until the steward led the others away before stepping closer to Mara. "You should understand something before the rumors begin," she said quietly. "The council has spent 3 years trying to make me his Luna." Everett's jaw hardened. "Celeste. She deserves to know." Mara looked from one to the other. Celeste continued. "They believe a political mate would keep the Western Pacts loyal. If they think he has formed an attachment to an unknown Omega, they will not blame him. They will blame you." Everett's voice turned cold. "No one will touch her." Celeste gave him a tired look. "That is exactly the kind of sentence that makes them afraid." She walked away before he could answer. Mara remained still, absorbing the weight of the warning. Everett faced her. "You are not a prisoner here," she wrote. "Yet everyone is deciding where I sleep and what I am allowed to know." He read it twice. "You are right." The admission came so quietly, she almost missed it. "The East Suite is available because I want you close, but the choice is yours." Mara studied him, then wrote, "One night." He nodded. "One night." 2 hours later, a sharp pulse tore through the unfinished bond and woke her. Mara crossed the connecting hallway and found Everett on the floor beside his bed, one hand pressed to his ribs, his breathing uneven. "Do not call the guards," he said. She knelt beside him and reached for the bandage. The blue light beneath his skin had spread. His wolf pushed forward, angry and frightened. Mara knew medicine would not be enough. She began to hum. The sound was barely audible, but Everett's breathing slowed. She continued until his eyes closed and his weight settled against the side of the bed. For the first time in months, he fell asleep without fighting it. Mara stayed beside him, her back against the mattress, watching the snow drift past the windows. Sometime before dawn, his hand found the edge of her sleeve and held on. When he woke, he did not release it. "The wound still hurts," he murmured. Mara looked down at the calm blue light beneath the bandage, then raised one eyebrow. Everett met her gaze without shame. "It might hurt again." She almost smiled. Then a woman's voice came from the open doorway. Your mother used to sit in that exact place. Mara turned. Helena stood there, pale from the overnight flight. And she sang the same song. Helena closed the door behind her before anyone in the hallway could hear. Mara slowly pulled her sleeve from Everett's hand and stood, but the warmth of his fingers stayed with her. Helena looked at the fading blue light beneath his bandage, then at Mara. Your mother was not just a healer, she said. She was a resonant. Everett pushed himself upright against the bed. Explain. Helena crossed the room and lowered her voice. Resonants were omegas whose voices could calm a wolf, reveal hidden memories, and expose false bonds. Years ago, the council called them dangerous. Mara grabbed her notepad. Why? Helena watched her write. Because they could hear when an oath was broken. The answer landed harder than Mara expected. Her mother had always warned her not to sing near ranked wolves, but she had never explained why. Everett's expression turned unreadable. How many resonants served at Blackridge? Officially? None. Helena glanced toward the old stone wall. Unofficially, 3. Lydia Whitmore was the last. Mara wrote another question. What happened to them? Helena hesitated. That was enough. Everett noticed too. Doctor. His voice carried the weight of command without rising. Helena let out a slow breath. Their records were erased after a royal inquiry. Lydia disappeared before the council could detain her. Mara's pencil pressed so hard against the page that the paper tore. She had grown up believing her mother had run because Silverpine was safer. Now it sounded like she had been hunted. A knock came from the outer door. Your Majesty, a guard called. The 12 Alpha Council is assembled. Everett looked toward the clock. They were not scheduled for another hour. Counselor Shaw moved the meeting forward. Everett stood. Pain tightened his face, but he refused to show more than that. Helena stepped closer. You should remain in bed. Gideon Shaw does not change schedules out of concern for my health. He reached for his black jacket. Mara wrote, Then let me change the bandage first. Everett read it and nodded. 10 minutes later, Mara followed him into the council chamber carrying a small medical case. The room was built beneath the oldest tower, with a long table cut from dark stone and 12 pack emblems set into the floor. Every alpha turned when she entered behind the king. Some looked curious. Others looked insulted. Gideon Shaw sat near the head of the table, silver-haired and perfectly calm. Your Majesty, he said, we were told your condition required an Omega attendant. Everett took his seat. You were told correctly. Gideon's eyes settled on Mara. Then she may wait outside. She stays. The room went still. Mara moved to the wall behind Everett, aware of every stare. Celeste sat across from him, her face carefully neutral. Gideon opened a folder. 3 border packs are threatening to withdraw from the alliance. They want stability. A formal engagement to Miss Arden would provide it. Celeste's mouth tightened, but she said nothing. Everett did not look at her. My marriage is not a trade agreement. Your crown is. The words were smooth, almost polite. Then one of the Western Alphas struck the table. We need a king who can control his wolf. The cursed wound reacted at once. Mara felt Everett's pain through the unfinished bond before he moved. His hand gripped the arm of the chair. His eyes flashed silver. Several guards stepped forward. Mara understood what Gideon was doing. He wanted everyone to see Everett lose control. She should have stayed silent. Instead, she let one lone note leave her throat. Everett's wolf went still. So did every other wolf in the chamber. Heads turned toward her. Gideon rose slowly, all color draining from his face. He looked at Mara as though a ghost had stepped out of the wall. Lydia Whitmore, he whispered. Then his gaze dropped to Mara's eyes. She had a daughter. The council chamber stayed silent long enough for Mara to hear the clock above the doors. Gideon Shaw recovered first. She used a forbidden ability in a royal session, he said. She should be detained. Everett rose so quickly that the chair scraped across the stone floor. No one touches her. The pressure of his command rolled through the room. Several alphas lowered their eyes, but Gideon did not. You are proving my concern, Your Majesty. An unknown Omega sings once, and the king places her above council law. Mara stepped away from the wall before Everett could answer. She pulled out her notepad and wrote in large letters. I did not ask for his protection. Gideon's smile was thin. Then you will come willingly. Everett moved between them. Mara caught his sleeve and forced him to look at her. She wrote again. Protection is not the same as ownership. The word struck something in him. His jaw tightened, but not with anger at her. "You are right," he said. The entire chamber heard it. An Alpha King admitting fault to an Omega was more shocking than the song. Everett turned to Mara. "You may leave Blackridge today with a royal escort, and no one will stop you. Or you may stay and learn why your mother's name was erased. The choice is yours." Mara looked at Gideon. He had known Lydia. More than that, he feared her. Leaving would keep Mara safe, but it would also bury the truth again. She wrote one word. "Stay?" Everett gave a single nod. "Then she remains under her own authority." Gideon closed his folder. "This is not over." "No," Everett said. "It is not." An hour later, Helena led Mara and Everett into a sealed medical archive beneath the East Tower. The room smelled like dust, old paper, and cold metal. Helena unlocked a narrow cabinet and removed a damaged file marked with the crest of the previous king. "Your wound reacted to Mara's voice," she told Everett. "That means the silver is tied to memory, not just poison." Everett sat on the edge of an examination table while Mara unwrapped the bandage. The blue light beneath his skin had dimmed, but it pulsed when her fingers moved near it. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Helena looked at Mara. "Sing the same melody." Quietly. Mara hesitated. Everett noticed. "You do not have to." She met his eyes. For once, there was no command in them, only trust. Mara began with a low note. The archive walls seemed to breathe. The blue light spread beneath Everett's ribs, then rose along his chest like a hidden map. His hand closed around the edge of the table. The unfinished mate bond opened between them, deeper than before. Mara saw what he saw. Blackridge, 17 years earlier. A younger Everett stood outside the throne room while voices argued behind the doors. Lydia Whitmore faced the former Alpha King, her hair loose, her expression fierce. "The bond was broken on purpose," she said. "Someone altered the oath." A younger Gideon stepped from the shadows. "Careful, Omega." Lydia ignored him and turned toward Everett. "The truth is inside the crown line. The heir they named is not the heir they chose." The memory shook. Everett's pain surged, and Mara stopped singing. He opened his eyes, breathing hard. Helena stared at him. "What did you see?" Everett looked at Mara, his face pale beneath the control he wore like armor. "Your mother knew something about my succession." Then a second voice echoed through the bond, weak but clear, as if Lydia had left it waiting for the right person to hear. "Find the oath beneath the throne." The oath beneath the throne was not a metaphor. Everett knew that before Helena finished locking the archive door behind them. "There is a chamber under the council hall," he said. "Only the reigning king and the royal beta have access." Mara wrote, "Then we need your beta." Everett's expression changed. "Nolan Pierce is in Seattle negotiating with the coastal pacts." Helena crossed her arms. "That sounds inconvenient." "It is worse than inconvenient," Everett said. "He is the only person besides me who knows the lower vault exists." Mara felt his suspicion through the bond, sharp and unwanted. Everett noticed her reaction. "You can feel that." She nodded. The connection had not closed after the memory. His exhaustion pressed against her ribs, and beneath it was something quieter. Fear. Not fear of losing the crown. Fear that everyone he trusted might have helped build it on a lie. Helena left to contact Nolan, giving them strict instructions not to attempt another memory until Everett had rested. They ignored half of that advice. By evening, Mara and Everett stood behind the old throne in the empty council hall. Security lights glowed along the stone walls, while snow tapped softly against the narrow windows. Everett pressed his palm to a carved blackwood crest. A section of the floor unlocked with a heavy click. "Royal architecture," he said. "Everything requires blood, a title, or a dramatic staircase." Mara glanced down at the steep steps and wrote, "At least you know it is dramatic." He gave her a tired smile. "You are becoming comfortable insulting your king." She wrote, "You told me I was under my own authority. I am beginning to regret how quickly you learned to use that." The vault below was colder than the rest of Blackridge. Shelves held oath ledgers, sealed recordings, and ceremonial objects from generations of pack rule. Mara found her mother's name in a faded visitor log. Lydia Whitmore had entered the chamber 17 years earlier with Queen Eleanor Blackwood, Everett's mother. Beside their names, someone had written one word in red ink. Treason. Everett stared at it for a long moment. "My mother died believing Lydia betrayed her." Mara looked at him. But the bond told her the anger was not directed at Lydia. It was directed inward. I believed it too, he admitted. Mara reached for her pad, then stopped. Instead, she touched his hand. The contact opened the bond wider. Everett felt the years Mara had spent hiding her voice. Mara felt the boy he had been, standing outside locked rooms while adults decided which truths he was allowed to know. Neither pulled away. My wolf recognized you in Silverpine, he said quietly. Mara's pulse changed. He continued before she could step back. I will not claim you. I will not announce anything. A bond is not permission. The words loosened something inside her. She lifted her notepad. Then why keep finding reasons to have me nearby? Everett looked toward the shelves, as though one of them might offer a safer answer. Because when you are close, the noise stops. His voice lowered. The crown, the council, the wolf. For a few minutes, I remember I am a person. Mara forgot to breathe. He leaned closer, slowly enough that she could refuse. She did not. The space between them narrowed to inches. Then every alarm in the vault began to sound. Red lights flooded the room. Everett turned toward the central cabinet. Its steel door stood open. The oath ledger Lydia had signed was gone. On the security panel, one name flashed beneath the access record. Beta Nolan Pierce. The alarms were still echoing when the vault doors opened and 4 royal guards rushed down the stairs. Everett stepped in front of Mara before any of them reached the floor. Seal Blackridge, he ordered. No one leaves without my approval. The captain touched his earpiece. Your Majesty, Beta Pierce entered the Citadel 20 minutes ago. Everett looked at the security panel again. Nolan was supposed to be hundreds of miles away. The unfinished mate bond carried a flash of betrayal so sharp that Mara felt it as her own. 10 minutes later, Nolan Pierce was brought into the council hall. He wore a travel coat dusted with snow, but he did not look surprised to see Everett waiting beside the throne. Where is the ledger? Everett asked. Nolan glanced at Mara before answering. Somewhere Gideon Shaw cannot reach it. Everett's voice dropped. You used your royal clearance to steal evidence from my vault. I removed it before someone else destroyed it. You lied about being in Seattle. Because every Blackridge communication line is monitored. Everett took one step forward. The pressure in the room shifted. By whom? Nolan looked toward the guards. Send them out. No, then Mara Whitmore will be dead before sunrise. The words struck the room like a slammed door. Everett's wolf surged, but Mara caught his hand before the curse could answer his anger. Nolan watched the small movement. That is exactly what they are afraid of, he said. A resonant tied to the crown through a mate bond. Mara pulled out her notepad. Who are they? Nolan exhaled. Men whose families helped erase your mother's line. My father was one of them. Everett went completely still. Nolan continued. 17 years ago, Lydia discovered that certain council members were altering royal oaths. Resonance could expose the changes. Gideon ordered their records destroyed. My father helped him. Mara's fingers tightened around the pen. Everett's voice was cold. And you knew? I knew pieces. Not enough to prove anything. You knew enough to let me trust Gideon. Nolan flinched. It was the first crack in his control. I was trying to keep you alive. By deciding which truths I was allowed to hear. The betrayal between them was older than the missing ledger. Mara could feel it through Everett, buried beneath years of loyalty. Nolan reached slowly into his coat and placed a small black drive on the table. The ledger is safe. This is a copy of the oath records. Lydia's final entry says a resonant voice can awaken every false promise made in the royal chamber. Not just yours. All of them. Mara wrote, then why steal it? Nolan looked directly at her. Because once Gideon knows you can do that, he will not try to arrest you. He will make you disappear. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the council hall turned on at once. A recording filled them. Mara's voice from the earlier meeting played through the speakers, altered and repeated beneath images of Everett losing control. A headline appeared across the bottom. Unknown Omega uses forbidden power on Alpha King. Everett stared at the screen. Nolan swore under his breath. Mara's phone began vibrating with pack alerts. One message appeared after another. Demands for investigation. Calls for Everett to step down. Claims that Mara had manipulated the crown. Then the final notice arrived from the council. At dawn, Mara Whitmore would be taken into custody. Everett turned toward her. They will not have you. Mara looked at the guards, the screens, and the fear spreading through Blackridge. She understood what staying beside him would cost. Before sunrise, she left her royal access card on Everett's desk and slipped out through the medical wing. When Everett entered her room, the bed was empty. On the pillow, Mara had left only one sentence. "I will not be the reason they destroy your crown." Everett found Mara's note at 6:12 in the morning, 3 minutes before the council arrived to place her in custody. He read the sentence once, then folded the paper with careful hands. The calm on his face frightened everyone in the room more than anger would have. "Find her," he told Nolan. Quietly, Nolan glanced toward the council guards gathering outside. "They are about to call a vote of no confidence. Then they can vote without me." Everett reached for his coat, but the cursed silver flared beneath his ribs. The pain drove him against the desk, and Mara's fear rushed through the unfinished bond from miles away. She was alive. She was moving south. Silverpine. Everett straightened. "Prepare the car." Gideon entered before Nolan could answer, followed by 4 ranked alphas. "Leaving now would confirm every accusation against you." Everett turned slowly. "My healer has been threatened inside my own home. Your Omega fled a lawful investigation. She is not my property." Gideon placed a document on the desk. "There is a way to end this. Publicly deny the mate bond, announce your engagement to Celeste Arden, and surrender Mara Whitmore for questioning. The alliance remains intact. Your crown remains yours." Nolan's hand tightened at his side. Everett did not touch the document. "You mistake the crown for something I am afraid to lose." By noon, Mara was back in her mother's small house outside Silverpine. The kitchen looked exactly as she remembered it. Faded yellow cabinets, a chipped coffee mug beside the sink, and an old wind chime tapping against the porch. She should have felt safe. Instead, the mate bond ached like an unfinished sentence. The television showed Everett entering the emergency council session alone. Reporters shouted questions from behind the security line. "Did Mara Whitmore influence your decisions? Will you honor the arranged alliance with Celeste Arden?" Everett stopped at the microphone. "No individual controls my judgment," he said. "The safety of the Western Pax comes before personal desire." The broadcast cut to commentators before he continued. Mara stared at the screen. He had not defended the bond. He had not chosen her. She hated herself for expecting him to. A knock sounded at the front door. Mara opened it to find Celeste standing on the porch in a cream coat, snow caught in her hair. "You should not be here," Mara signed. "Neither should you," Celeste replied. Everett refused the engagement. Mara froze. Celeste held up her phone. The official broadcast removed the next 30 seconds. Gideon controls the council feed. She played the original recording. Everett's voice filled the kitchen. "I will not purchase stability with a woman's freedom, whether that woman is Celeste Arden or Mara Whitmore." Mara's throat tightened. Celeste lowered the phone. "He did not deny you. He refused to name the bond because once it becomes public, every enemy of the crown can use you against him." Mara reached for her notepad. "He still decided for me." "Yes," Celeste said. Men raised to command often confuse protection with permission. She removed a thin folder from her bag and placed it on the kitchen table. Lydia Whitmore's name was written across the front. "I found this inside my father's private archive. Your mother sent it to my family before she disappeared." Mara opened the file. The first pages documented altered oath records and the disappearance of resonant witnesses. The final page held a handwritten warning. The silver inside the king did not come from battle. It entered him during the coronation. Mara read the line twice. Beneath it, Lydia had written one more sentence. "Gideon Shaw created the wound, and every time Everett resists the council, the poisoned oath tightens." The mate bond suddenly burned through Mara's chest. Far away at Blackridge, Everett dropped to one knee before the council as blue light spread beneath his skin. Gideon leaned toward him and whispered, "Choose the throne, or the curse will choose for you." Mara felt Everett's pain through the bond before Celeste's phone finished playing the recording. The force of it stole the air from her lungs and sent the coffee mug rattling against the kitchen table. Celeste caught her arm. "What happened?" Mara pressed one hand to her chest and reached for the notepad with the other. "The curse is active." Celeste read the words and looked toward the snow-covered road. "Then we go back." Mara opened Lydia's file again. The final pages described a poisoned oath sealed beneath Blackridge during Everett's coronation. The silver was not meant to kill him quickly. It was designed to punish resistance. Every time Everett rejected the council's command, The curse tightened around his wolf until obedience felt like survival. Helena arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and carrying an old medical case. Mara showed her the file. Helena read the notes once, then sat down hard. Lydia suspected this, but she never had proof. Mara pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. A resident may break the oath during a public royal gathering, but the singer must carry the memories trapped inside it. Carry them for how long? Celeste asked. Helena's silence answered first. Possibly forever. Mara wrote, "What happens to my voice?" Helena looked at her with painful honesty. "You may lose it." The bond pulsed again. Everett was still conscious, but barely holding the wolf back. Mara closed the file. Celeste studied her face. "You do not owe him your life." Mara wrote slowly. "This is not only about him. It is about every Omega they silenced." By late afternoon, an unmarked royal vehicle stopped outside the house. Everett stepped out alone. No guards. No crown pin. Snow clung to his black coat, and the blue light beneath his collar was brighter than before. Mara opened the door, but did not invite him in. "I came to ask you to return," he said. She held up the notepad. "You came to decide for me again." No, his voice was tired, but steady. "I came to tell you the truth." He stood on the porch while the wind moved through the pines. "I did not name the bond because I thought silence would protect you. It did not. It only made you believe I was ashamed of you." Mara's grip tightened around the pen. Everett continued. "I was wrong." She wrote, "You always say you are protecting people after you take away their choice." He read every word. "Then choose now. Stay in Silver Pine, and I will make sure no council guard crosses the border. Return to Blackridge, and you speak on your own terms. I will not ask you to sing. I will not ask you to save me." Mara looked at the blue light spreading beneath his skin. "You might die? That does not make your life mine to spend." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Mara stepped onto the porch. Her voice came out rough from years of silence, but clear enough for him to hear. "I will go back." Everett's eyes widened. It was the first time she had spoken directly to him without a song. Mara lifted her chin. "But not as your healer, not as your secret, and not as something the crown owns." Everett bowed his head. "Not as a king accepting obedience, but as a man accepting terms." "Agreed." Mara looked toward Blackridge beyond the mountains. "Then take me to the council." Everett opened the vehicle door for her. Before she climbed in, the mate bond carried one quiet truth from him to her. He was not afraid of losing the throne anymore. He was afraid she would lose her voice saving it. Blackridge was under lockdown when Mara and Everett returned. Council guards filled the main entrance, and every screen in the lobby displayed the same notice. Alpha King under formal review. Everett stepped from the vehicle first, but Mara walked beside him instead of behind him. The guards noticed. So did Gideon, who waited beneath the royal crest with a calm smile. "You brought her back," he said. "She chose to return," Everett answered. Gideon's gaze shifted to Mara. "Then she may explain herself before the council. She will speak when she is ready." Mara felt the curse tighten through the bond. Everett's hand closed at his side, but he kept walking. Inside the council chamber, Nolan stood between two guards with his royal insignia removed. Helena waited near the wall under medical suspension. Celeste sat with the Northern Alpha delegation, her expression hard. Gideon had moved quickly. "Nolan Pierce is charged with treason," he announced. "Dr. Voss is charged with concealing forbidden bloodline records. Mara Whitmore is charged with manipulating the crown." Mara looked at Nolan. His face was tired, but he gave her a small nod. The oath records were still safe. Everett took his place before the throne, but did not sit. "Present your evidence." Gideon raised a hand. The altered recording played across the chamber screens. Mara's song echoed beneath images of Everett losing control. Pack leaders began to murmur. "This is edited," Celeste said. Gideon ignored her. "The king has placed one Omega above law, alliance, and duty. We will now determine whether he remains fit to lead." The blue light beneath Everett's shirt suddenly flared. Mara felt the shock of it race through the bond. He gripped the stone table, breathing through the pain. Gideon stepped closer. "Submit to the council's protection, Everett. Publicly reject the bond, and this ends." Everett lifted his head. "No," the single word changed everything. The curse answered. His wolf surged forward, not with rage, but with unbearable pressure. Guards backed away. Cameras turned toward him. Gideon wanted the entire alliance to witness a king losing control. Mara began to sing. The first note steadied Everett's breathing. The second made the blue light tremble. Then a sharp tone sounded from hidden speakers in the chamber. Mara's voice vanished. She tried again, but no sound came. Helena's face went pale. A suppression frequency, she said. They built it from the resonant files. Gideon smiled. Your little miracle is finished. Everett dropped to one knee as the curse tightened around his wolf. The guards raised restraints, but Mara stepped between them and placed both hands against Everett's face. His eyes were no longer fully human. Still, he recognized her. He could have fought everyone in the room. Instead, he lowered his head into her palms. The chamber went silent. An alpha king, half lost to his wolf, had chosen trust over violence. Gideon's smile faded. Take them both. The guards moved forward. Mara closed her eyes, searching for the bond beneath the pain. She found Everett there, buried under the curse, holding on to one thought. Not a command, not a claim, a plea. Sing through me. Mara understood before Everett opened his eyes. The bond did not need her voice. It needed her consent. Gideon raised one hand, and the guards closed in. Remove them from the chamber. Everett remained on one knee, his head bowed beneath Mara's hands, every muscle held under impossible strain. Mara searched for the quiet place inside the bond where his wolf had first recognized her. She found fear, duty, and years of loneliness. Beneath all of it, she found him waiting. She pressed her forehead to his. I choose to stand with you. The thought crossed the bond without sound. Everett's eyes opened. Human gray pushed through the silver. He rose slowly and faced the cameras surrounding the council floor. The mate bond is real, he said. The room erupted in whispers. Gideon stepped forward. Then you admit she has compromised the crown. No. Everett took Mara's hand, but he did not pull her closer. I admit that I concealed the bond because I believed secrecy would protect her. It did not. Mara Whitmore owes this throne nothing. She will not become Luna unless she chooses it freely. The pressure in the chamber shifted. Several Omegas standing near the rear doors lifted their heads. Gideon's expression hardened. A king does not place personal attachment above royal law. A king does not use royal law to erase consent. Everett looked at Mara. Whatever happens next is your choice. Mara placed her palm over the cursed light beneath his shirt. The suppression tone still filled the room, but she stopped trying to force sound through her throat. Instead, she opened the bond completely. Everett gasped as her memory moved into him. Lydia's song, the Silverpine medical room, every warning Mara had carried since childhood. Then Everett began to sing. His voice was low and rough, nothing like hers, but the melody was unmistakable. The bond carried Mara's lost notes through him, spreading them across the chamber. The carved pack emblems in the floor began to glow. One by one, hidden oaths awakened. Images appeared across the dark screens without anyone touching the controls. Lydia stood before the former king, accusing Gideon of altering the succession oath. A younger Gideon ordered resonant records destroyed. Nolan's father handed him the ceremonial blade used during Everett's coronation. Then the memory changed. Everett knelt beneath the crown while Gideon pressed silver into the oath seal. Every alpha in the room felt the truth of it. The pain, the control, the lie. Nolan stepped away from his guards. I kept the original ledger, he said. It confirms everything. He placed it on the council table. Celeste rose beside the northern delegation. The Arden Pacts withdraw support from any marriage arrangement and from Gideon Shaw's authority. Other alpha leaders followed. Gideon looked around as his allies lowered their eyes. You need me, he said. Without order, these pacts will tear each other apart. Everett's wolf pressed against his skin, demanding justice. Mara felt the temptation through the bond. So did everyone else. Everett released her hand and faced Gideon. You used my crown to make obedience look like peace. Gideon braced himself for an ancient challenge. Everett refused to give him one. Your title is revoked. Your assets will rebuild the pacts harmed by your orders. You will answer publicly for every erased name. Gideon's face collapsed. Death would have been quick. This justice would require him to live with the truth. The blue light beneath Everett's skin cracked into silver sparks and faded. Across the chamber, false oath marks disappeared. Mara tried to speak, but her voice was still gone. Everett turned to her, his expression stripped of every royal defense. There is no command left, he said softly. No counsel. No curse. He held out his hand without touching her. What do you choose? 3 months later, the throne room no longer felt like a place built to silence people. The old council table had been moved, the raised platform lowered, and every pack now sent one Omega representative alongside its alpha. Lydia Whitmore's name had been restored to the royal record, not as a traitor, but as the woman who tried to tell the truth before anyone was ready to hear it. Nolan Pierce no longer wore the Beta insignia. He had chosen to spend the next several years helping the border packs his family had harmed. Helena returned as head of royal medicine, with full authority to train Omega healers. Celeste became the Northern Pack's elected representative and rejected every suggestion that she needed a marriage to make her position legitimate. Gideon Shaw lived under guard in a small residence outside Blackridge, where he spent his days answering questions from families whose names he had erased. It was not dramatic justice. It was slower than that. He had to wake up every morning and face the world he had failed to control. Everett remained king, but the title had changed. So had he. He no longer made decisions behind locked doors, and he never again used protection as an excuse to deny someone a choice. Mara did not become Luna. Not yet. She opened a healing center in the East Wing, where Omegas could study medicine, bond law, and pack leadership without asking permission from anyone above them. Her voice returned slowly, one word at a time. Some mornings it was barely a whisper. Other days she could hum an entire melody before it faded. Everett never asked her to hurry. One snowy evening, Mara found him sitting on an examination table with a small bandage wrapped around his hand. She looked at the injury, then at him. What happened? Her voice was quiet, but clear. Everett glanced down at the bandage. Training accident. Mara removed it and found a shallow scrape that had already healed. She raised one eyebrow. This required royal medical attention. I was concerned. About what? Possible complications. Mara tried not to smile. There are no complications. Everett looked toward the window, where lights from the new healing center glowed against the snow. Then I suppose I will have to find another reason to stay. Mara grew still. Months ago, those words would have frightened her. They would have sounded like a claim, a command, or another decision made in her name. Now they sounded like what they were. A man asking to be chosen. Everett reached into his coat and placed the royal mate seal on the table between them. This belongs to the crown, he said. The bond belongs to us. I will never confuse the two again. Mara looked at the seal, then at the man who had once believed strength meant carrying every burden alone. And if I never choose the title, she asked, then I will still choose you. And if the council objects? They have learned to survive disappointment. She laughed, and the sound filled the room with a warmth Blackridge had never known before. Mara placed her hand over the unfinished mark near her heart. Then she took Everett's hand and placed it there too. The bond opened gently, without pain, pressure, or command. It felt less like fate and more like coming home after a long winter. Everett closed his eyes as her heartbeat settled beside his. Mara began to sing, not because he was wounded, not because the crown needed saving, and not because anyone demanded proof of what she could do. She sang because she was free. Outside, the mountain remained cold, the packs remained imperfect, and leadership still carried a price. But inside that quiet room, the most powerful man in the alliance finally understood that love was not proven by how tightly you held someone. It was proven by whether they felt safe enough to stay. Mara had spent most of her life believing silence kept her alive. In the end, it was not her voice that changed the kingdom. It was her decision to use it, and his decision to listen.